Welcome to another episode of the Not Another Yoga Class podcast and LinkedIn Live series. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Susie Asli, who's a mindfulness coach and mindfulness therapist, and the co-host of the podcast Teenagers Untangled. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
And today, we're going to be talking a little bit about stress and specifically how to find the pockets of calm in the midst of all of the busyness and the chaos. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said something really interesting to me before we started this podcast. You said, Jamie, companies are trying to eliminate stress, but that's the wrong thing to do. Stress can be actually quite useful. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot more awareness around this whole idea of trying to be less stressed. We all recognize that stress is actually the number one proxy killer. And so it's not a good thing to have too much of, but it's also not a great idea to have as a policy that we're trying to get rid of stress. We're trying to eliminate stress from the workplace, because you can't. Firstly, you just can't eliminate stress. It's part of the human condition. And also, we don't really want to, because there are two kinds of stress, really. There's a short-term stress, which which focuses us. It's a signal that something is up, that we need to take action. So, for example, you're standing at the edge of the road and a car comes. If that doesn't stress you out, that's not going to end well. You want to get a bit stressed and jump out of the way so the car doesn't run you over. So that's good stress, and we can apply that in the workplace as well. Good stress, you've got a deadline coming up, you've got to an important conversation, a bit of adrenaline. That's a good thing. It makes you focused, and it shows you that you're on it. So we don't want to get rid of that. What we do want to get rid of or manage is long-term stress. That's the bad guy, and that's the one that is accumulative, and it's kind of at the back of the mind the whole time, or the back of the body, really. It's kind of niggling away, and that's the one that accumulates and accumulates, and we don't notice it accumulating, and then eventually can potentially lead to burnout. So that's the one we want to take care of.
Got it. And obviously burnout costs a hell of a lot. People going away long term, being signed off for stress, not performing necessarily, creating clashes within the group, turning up moody, all the rest of it.
Yes.
So let's try and address this a little bit, because we've got lots of different solutions for reducing stress.
Yeah.
But what I brought you on today is to talk about something that the individual, the employee, can do themselves to just try and find a little bit of space, which seems impossible sometimes.
Yes. So yes, absolutely. So we have, finding pockets of calm in the midst of the busyness. So we can't eradicate stress. And as I've just explained, we don't really want to, but we want to learn to manage it. So mindfulness, basically, in a nutshell, is all about awareness. It's trying to be present in this moment and building our awareness to show us what is showing up. And if that is stress, how can I take care of it? So ideally, well, not even ideally, but we have this myth around mindfulness and meditation that, we're just going to go and sit on a mountaintop, and maybe we'll be there for a few weeks, and that would be all lovely, and we'll come back and it will just filter into our lives and we'll be super zen. And most of us can't do that, because we have lives. And B, maybe that's not even, the most helpful way of doing it. So we can go and we can learn a lot if we take ourselves out of the situation and do really look at this practice of mindfulness on our own. But we can also integrate it into the busy life that we already have. And that's very much how I teach. So it's learning, how do we bring pockets of calm into our busy day? And then we do that a little bit at a time. And if we do that maybe 4 or 5 times across a day, we've suddenly built up, a capacity. And we can do that in all sorts of ways. So one thing I teach is to use the time as individuals. So there's company stress management, and then there's as you said, what can the individuals do? And the individuals can, for example, use the time we have when we're waiting. So I find this a really helpful way of doing it, and a really doable way is we wait multiple times a day, like for the printer, for the coffee, for the bus, if you have kids, for your kids to put their flipping shoes on in the morning, all of the little waiting time. And very often the waiting time is the same. However irritated we get and however niggly we go, come on, hurry up. It doesn't usually shave off very much of the actual time. So the waiting time is the same. So then we can choose how we spend that time. So we can choose by get frustrated and end the waiting time really annoyed, even if it's just the kettle boiling. Or we can go, do you know what? I'm going to use this time to just take a moment. And that moment might look like just grounding, which means just feeling your feet on the floor, which sounds really nothingy and not going to do anything. But actually, just a reset for 10 seconds can actually make quite a difference if you do that enough. Or taking a few breaths where you just are with your breath for, I don't know, 10 or 20 breaths. Or there are little practices that you can do, actual breath techniques, which I'm very happy to share if you wanted to know any of those, that you can do. And they only have to take, 1 minute, 2 minutes, maybe 5 if you have. And if you do that a few times in the day, you are building your resilience, your capacity to manage stress. And the more you do that, the more aware you are then when the stress pops up, and you can take a handle on it before it accumulates.
I love this. So as someone who is attracted to chaos, I've used 2 of those techniques in the past to great effect. The first, I was doing stand-up comedy, amateur stand-up, like 5-minute sets at open mic clubs for a year. It was a challenge I set for myself about 5 years ago. And one of the people I was doing it with said, listen, before you go on, just drive your feet into the ground. And the difference it made was unbelievable. So it's something I use a lot now. If I ever feel like I've got a moment and I am stressed, maybe it's, I'm about to talk to a new company, or I've got a particularly busy meeting, or I'm doing a talk or something. It's the first thing I resort to is driving my feet into the ground, and it makes a huge difference.
Amazing. That's amazing advice you got. Firstly, well done for your stand-up comedy. That's very courageous.
If you'd seen it, you wouldn't have said well done.
Okay. Well, what are we doing anyway? And secondly, like stress, most of our stress is thoughts. So it's thoughts that are driving the stress. And if we dig deeper into that, so thought and mindset and all that is a big part of mindfulness. Most of our thoughts are not true, but that's a whole other story. But stress is very much thought-based. And if we can get back into our bodies, which is what grounding does, by regulating our bodies, and just grounding and pushing your feet into the floor is a brilliant thing to do.
The second one that I've used in the past, which I really like, is using a breathing technique. The one I've used is inhale for a certain amount of time, hold the breath for a certain amount of time, exhale for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Is that one that you've used in the past with the people you help, or do you have an alternative?
Yeah, that's a brilliant one. So that's potentially box breathing. Is that 4 and 4?
I think so. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
There are lots of different breathing techniques, and breathing, I mean, our breath is key to all of this. So we tend to breathe in a shallow way because we're all a little bit stressed anyway, and we want to get into our bellies. That's where we can feel more calmer. But breathing is we have our out breath is connected to what we call our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our inbuilt self-soothing. So when everything is all a bit much and overwhelming, we naturally sigh. We go, oh, for God's sake, or whatever's happened. And that is our body's way of trying to kick into balance. But usually in our modern lives, a sigh doesn't cut it. It's not enough. So we need to cultivate practices that kind of build on that idea of having a long exhale. So there's box breathing, which isn't a long exhale, but you're holding and then you're releasing. It's connected to that. And then there are ones where you can breathe in for a certain amount. So 4, you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and then out for 8. And you just keep doing, and that's a really good regulator. And then one that I love using, and actually my daughter uses it, it's a good bedtime one, is breathing in for 7 and out for 11. And if you do that kind of regularly, just have this long exhale, you feel, your body goes, that's better. And you're kind of almost tricking your body into believing it's less stress than it is. Because everything, when we get stressed, our heart beats quicker, we get hotter, everything's running quickly. And if we do,
my brain feels heavy.
Heavy brain is good awareness. That's one of your signals. So we all have individual signals. And if we breathe out and stay with that, then our body goes, oh, my heart rate's gone down, because that's what happens when you breathe slower, your heart rate goes down. I've cooled down a little bit. Oh, the danger must have passed. I must be all right. And then your thoughts calm down as well. So we're almost going in through the back door and manipulating the system as well by using breath work. It's very powerful.
I love it. It's like a hack.
It's a hack, yeah. And it's also important to mention that not everybody likes breath work, and particularly if there's a lot of trauma or people are really struggling. Sometimes breath work can be quite challenging. So if that's the case, then it's best to just kind of leave that to one side. It's important to know that, because very well-meaning people go, oh, you just need to go and do some breath work, and actually maybe that's not for that particular person, but it's usually a good thing to try.
Yeah, I love that. I have ADHD and kind of try to talk to other people in the ADHD community quite a lot, and that's come up before, because to us it can be boring. We are attracted to things that are very interesting, and the idea of slowing down is horrible for us. So
really uncomfortable.
This is why the foot one works for me really well.
Yeah, or just doing one breath. Like, who says you have to do 10 minutes? Like, just make it tiny, break it down, and make that, you can build on that capacity if you want to, but make it as small as is comfortable, and then build on that, rather than thinking I have to jump in and sit here for 30 minutes really uncomfortably.
Yeah. So I have a question. So there's going to be some people that watch this who are probably a little bit cynical about some of the stuff we've talked about. Have you got any examples of people who probably went into a process with you feeling fairly cynical, but then came out and actually it made a very tangible difference, not just to their day, but to their life?
Yeah, many. And to be honest, if I'm teaching in a group, I quite like it when there are a few cynics.
Yeah.
It's kind of more fun, isn't it? Because you can challenge them, but it also makes the discussion more interesting, because they're asking the questions that maybe some other people are thinking as well. But yes, that's a great question. Definitely, I've had many people coming in going, I'm not sure, I've heard it's really good, but I don't really buy into it. And then they try it and they go away, and it affects their time at work, because it makes you more focused, it makes you more productive. And I find my experience is relationships, it has a massive impact on relationships, because with mindfulness, what you're doing is we're all reactive. We react because we're human beings, especially in the workplace, especially when we're stressed. Our fuse gets shorter, and we're building in a buffer zone so that we get triggered, we react, and we build in a buffer zone where we just take a moment, and then we choose our response. And that's the feedback I get of people going, oh, normally I would have bitten his head off, or stropped off, or whatever your fight, flight, freeze pattern happens to be. And the feedback is, I didn't do that. We had a conversation, or I took a moment, and when I came back, my response was different. And I get that feedback all the time. It's quite amazing, actually. And you often get the feedback from the cynics, because they're so amazed, and then they're the ones that want to tell everybody and go, try this.
Of course, 100%. The cheerleaders are always the ones that were cynical at first. And yeah, I've experienced this. Me and my partner do this all the time. If there is a moment of tension and someone snaps, the other one always takes a moment to figure out where that snap came from. It's never reactionary. And we haven't had an argument in years as a result, just from that small technique. Amazing. Just taking a moment.
Yeah, taking a moment is transformational. It's amazing. That's an amazing story. I actually did a group once where, talking about cynics, it was a bigger group, and the boss was cynical, and it was told to me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it was a really big company, or not, I don't think I'm allowed to mention it. And I at the end, he was the one that went, that was amazing. I've taken away so much from that. Thank you so much. And I was such a cynic. I thought it was going to be a waste of time. So I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's a win. If people wanted to find out more about you specifically and where to find you, Susie, where would they go?
I have a website, so it's www.amindful-life.co.uk. That's where you can find everything I do. All my links. I'm on LinkedIn and all on social media, but everything's in my website.
Brilliant. And if you can't find Susie, then message me and I'll send you her way. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It was brilliant. Bye-bye.